What if you knew your success were guaranteed? You know that that is your future. Like you can see your future and you know that's what's happening. Then would you be as affected by the micro failures, the micro setbacks, the rejections, the judgment along the way? Like, would that affect you as much as it does now? And I'm like, well, what if I told you now that that is your life? Like, you know that success is there for the taking. It's there for the taking for all of us.
Welcome to the Inspired to Thrive podcast. I'm your host, Phoebe Lay, and in each episode, I will be sharing with you insights from either an inspiring person or myself to help you thrive and shine online and in person. We talk about all things marketing, relationships, money, business, growth, mindset, and more. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you inspired to thrive. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspired to Thrive and Shine podcast. I have with me today a very amazing guest, Trang Nova, who is a mentor, speaker, and an advocate for women who know they're made for more and are hungry to build their dream businesses of impact to replace their jobs so that they can live out their potential and purpose with freedom and fulfillment. In her mid-20s, Trang experienced a quarter-life crisis that led her to leave the sports industry so she could help women not just as athletes, but as human beings. And now Trang is determined to help others step into their greatest power and thrive in their lives of impact. Because ultimately, she believes that when enough individuals are thriving, then humanity will thrive. And when humanity thrives, then the world can thrive for all forms of life and future generations. Trang Nova, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here.
Oh, Phoebe, thank you for that warm welcome. And I'm delighted to be on the show. So, really keen to get into it.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you. I mean, just for the listeners out here, a little bit of background. Trang and I met on International Women's Day, and we actually collided twice in one day at two different events. And I've had the pleasure of having some really deep conversations with this amazing human. And what really inspires me about you, Trang, is at such a young age, you decided to step outside of the world that society tells you is the norm. So you broke out of your 9 to 5. And obviously, there's a lot of societal and family and cultural conditioning that tells us that that is the safety net. And you went and did your thing. And what's very, very cool is that you are now helping others do the same. So, Trang, I'd love to hear, first of all, how did you get to where you are, and what was some of the challenges that you experienced in getting here?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. And like this, I can talk about this for hours. But to share the overview. So I am the daughter of immigrant parents from Vietnam to Australia. I was born in Melbourne, and because of that, like growing up, my parents coming from war and poverty, I think you understand that, Phoebe. They wanted to raise me in a way that would set me up for the highest chances of success in the future. So they were really focused on academia, like the classic. I had a few career options. I could become a doctor, a lawyer, or a disappointment. And because of that, I ended up choosing to work as a physiotherapist. And that was something that was in between what my parents wanted for me. And then it was also kind of sporty. So that's what I thought that I would enjoy. And I want to also say, like, my parents, they were doing the best they could at the time. I love my parents so much. But at the time, that's what they thought was best for me. And that's what I went with. So I became a physiotherapist. And that's what I thought I wanted to do at the time. But after working for a few years, as you mentioned before, like I started to feel that there was more for me out there, that I was destined to be more and do more. And that was definitely one of the biggest challenges that really got me at not just a physical level, like, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about this in a moment, but like, when I was young, I did get bullied for being Vietnamese and not knowing how to speak English. Like that is a certain type of challenge, but having this deep down feeling that I was meant for more, it was very like spiritual, it was very emotional. And that was tough. That was so tough because I had this idea of who I was and where I was destined to go and like what all the expectations were of me. But then I felt like I was going in a different direction. So my quarter life crisis, I would say, was a challenge along the way. And then when I did eventually go out and start my own business and went down that journey of business, oh, were the challenges just starting. The classic challenges of business, fear of judgment, like rejection, failure, having COVID to really like uproot everything during the journey of business. There have been some challenges along the way, but I would do it all again to be where I am now because all of it has been so worthwhile to be able to live a life that is true to me and allows me to be completely free and fulfilled in what I believe is my purpose and my potential.
Wow, that's amazing, Trang. And just to go back a little bit, and just to share a bit of context, you now speak about topics such as how you went from being bullied in school, not knowing how to speak English, to helping people develop self-belief even when they feel the world is against them.
Mm,
Can you tell us a little bit about like how did you overcome that? Because when most people that grow up having been bullied have scars. Like we all
mm,
have a little bit of that deep rooted insecurities at some point, whether it's, at a party or at an event or some certain situation where it will trigger it. How
mm.
did you overcome that? And do you still have triggers?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was young, yeah, as I mentioned before, I knew how to speak Vietnamese before I could speak English, being raised by immigrant parents. So when I was in school, my English was non-existent. I was the kid sitting in the corner by myself while everyone else played around me in what seems like an alien language. And I remember when I was in prep, we would have like grade six buddies, that pairing system between preps and grade sixes. And the system was a buddy system. But I didn't understand that it was called buddy. I thought it was body, as in like, our physical bodies. I was like, oh, I'm so excited to have my grade six body. And then the kids around me would jeer at me. They'd be like, what do you mean body? Like, it's not body. And they would just continue to use that against me. And that's just one example of the many different ways that I felt outcasted and I wasn't accepted because I was different. Something that eventually helped me, I found, was as I went through primary school, that was something that remained as part of my identity, right? Because I'm still in school with the same kids that bullied me. The bullying reduced over the years, which was helpful for me, I guess, but I was still in that same environment until I graduated from grade six and then went to high school, which I think was the first thing that really helped in this journey of overcoming seeing myself in a way of being, inferior. Because when I went to high school, I could have a fresh start. I could be in a completely new environment where everyone around me had no idea who I was. I could be who I wanted to be. I could do what I wanted to do. And I had this opportunity to rewrite who I was. And from there, I started to remind myself and tell myself that, hey, like I can make friends and I can be cool and I can belong. So I started to repeat that to myself. And I think that was one of the things that also really helped because, whatever we repeat to ourselves, whatever story or narrative we repeat to ourselves is what we start to believe. And what we start to believe is what we start to see more of and what we create in our reality, isn't it? So repetition, and that's where affirmations come from. And I know there are people who hate affirmations, there are people who love affirmations, but the reality is whatever we repeat is what we start to believe. So I started to repeat to myself, hey, like I can belong, I can be part of groups of friends. But that in itself wasn't enough because, repetition, it can only go so far. Like I could
Mm.
say to you right now, like Santa Claus is real, Santa Claus is real, Santa Claus is real. I could say it 200 times, but you're probably still not going to believe me, right?
And also, it doesn't go deep into like, it's about what's going on in the subconscious and unconscious mind and our unconscious beliefs. And I think those are the hardest ones to rewire.
Absolutely. Because like 95 to 98% of our mind is the subconscious mind. That's what we don't have control over. So it takes the longest amount of time to rewire as a result of everything else that we do and everything else that we see. And that was the final thing that really helped me in that I had to start to see the evidence and the proof
Mm.
that I am worthy, that I can belong. So yeah, like I could repeat to you that Santa Claus is real, but you're not going to really believe me unless, let's say, you looked out of the window right now and you saw a man in red with a white beard
With his
in a
reindeer.
sleigh in the sky. Like if
Yeah.
you saw that with your own eyes being pulled by reindeer, then you might believe that Santa Claus is real. So for me, in high school, I started to do things that I previously wouldn't do. Started to put myself out there more, go to parties and do well academically and make friends and be like meet boys and have kind of like some romantic interests as well. And as I started to put myself out there more and more, one step at a time, I started to consolidate those things that I had been repeating in my head through becoming what I was telling myself that I was, like becoming that person and like seeing the evidence, creating proof that I
Mm.
was that person. And that confluence of that new environment, repeating what I wanted to be and continuing to tell myself that new story, and then ultimately doing the thing and seeing the evidence, that came together to allow me to develop this confidence that by the time I got to the end of high school, it was a really powerful part of it was a really great strength of mine. By the end of high school, I remember for my 18th birthday, I wanted to have like here's a funny story. I wanted to have a stripper for my 18th birthday. So I was a bit of a wild child by that point. And I was telling everyone, oh yeah, my friend organized a stripper for me for my 18th birthday. But really, I was the one that booked the stripper and I was the one who wanted to make that make that party for myself. So I was just like, I was up for doing things that other people wouldn't do. I was up for being a little bit different because I'd come full circle and owned myself through those pathways.
Wow. That's awesome. That is so fantastic. Trang, what would you say to people that are currently they're trying to develop more self-worth and deep-rooted confidence? I mean, in business especially, there are so many amazing men and women in business, especially women, and this is not a biased opinion or anything. It's something that there's a lot of research out there that shows that women tend to need a lot more confirmation that they can apply for a certain job or do something well
Mm,
and really uh not fail before they, attempt something. And I think especially women in business, there is a lot of imposter syndrome. There's always going to be questions like, do I really have what it takes? Or are people going to find out that I don't know X, Y, or Z? Or,
mm,
I'm young or I'm this or I'm that. There's always going to be these thoughts. And some people have more than others. And obviously, there's a way to develop deep rooted confidence. So, how do you help people overcome imposter syndrome, or how did you overcome any of your imposter syndrome type thoughts?
yeah. Imposter syndrome is real. The statistics show that up to 80% of people will experience some form of imposter syndrome where they feel like they're not worthy enough, they're not good enough, their success has been a fluke, that they are not cut out to be doing what they're doing, that yeah, they're a fraud. All these thoughts. And as you said, Phoebe, between the genders, women experience a higher rate of imposter syndrome and self-doubt than men. And that's due to various reasons, like historically, societally. There's just been an entire culture of, shunning women, boxing them in, and not giving them the space and the voice to be able to express themselves. So I think like tying it back to what I was saying before, definitely those various aspects. So your environment, your environment has such a powerful effect on how you see yourself. It's like that
So
analogy
true.
where a bottle of water in a supermarket is going to cost $1. But a bottle of water on a plane or a bottle of water at the MCG for a footy game is going to cost almost $8, let's say. It's the same thing, but in different environments, it is worth differently because it is desired and needed and demanded at different, like in a different way in different settings. So for us women, and we want to be able to feel and see our own worth, we need to put ourselves in environments where we are valued, where we are loved, where we are seen. And I find it so helpful to surround ourselves with other women who are doing the same thing. And yes, if you're in a male dominated industry or if you are, not used to having women around you, it's going to be a big shift for you to put yourself in those rooms and in those circles. But being surrounded by other women who are doing big things, who are shooting for the stars, making big money, having big promotions in their life, having a lot of power in their life, that's going to give us the permission. It's going to give us the inspiration and the example that that is possible. But also, not only that, being surrounded by other women who have done these things and also talk openly about how they have had rejection, failure, setbacks, how they are not perfect, how there is a lot of ups and downs along the journey. To once again remind ourselves that it's okay to misstep, it's okay to have failure along the way. That does not define our potential, our future success, or our worth. It is simply actually a prerequisite. It is a prerequisite to that success. And I talk about all the time how my first ever workshop, there were only two people, two attendees plus my mum and dad.
Wow.
My first ever online course that I ran, like I was so insecure about what I should charge for that course. I charged it at $500 when it was an 8-week course with two 90-minute live calls each week, a lot of my time and energy, and I charged $500. Not only
Wow.
that, I've had so many launches where no one signed up, so then I just abandoned the launch. I've had so many times where I've done a talk and I've received outward negative feedback on the spot. Like one talk that I
Wow.
did, it was being streamed live as well as being a live talk. And someone who was on the live stream who thought they were on mute, but they weren't, said out loud, ugh, what a load of crap. Like out loud, I heard it. The whole audience heard it. The organizer like was sprinting from the back of the room trying to mute this thing. I've
Wow.
had all these moments. And I think when we openly speak about it and we hear other people speak about it, we can have that reassurance and that reaffirmation that, hey, like there is nothing wrong with us. Just because we had that setback, just because we had that rejection, it's not a reflection of our potential at all. It is simply part of the journey and what it takes to get to where we want to go. So
Absolutely.
the environment aspect I think is really big, as well as, repeating to yourself who you want to be, doing the visualizations as well that are related
So
to that.
powerful.
Yeah, visualizations is what changed the game for me because there's scientific evidence behind this. That's why athletes use visualizations and they call it mental rehearsal.
Mm.
It actually has been shown, and we were talking about subconscious rewiring. Research has shown that visualizations can actually change the rewiring of our brain to
Yep.
create more confidence, to create more certainty within ourselves, to actually even lead to physiological changes like muscles and like muscles getting bigger through the process of the visualization and rewiring the neurons in our nervous system. Like how insane is that? So there's a future programming visualization that I do, and it's something that I teach my clients as well, where we visualize a future event or a future scenario in our life, and we see it as though it is already happening. And how we can do it, there are so many ways that we can do it, but how I do it is actually work backwards and I start with the end. So I visualize 5 minutes after the successful completion of that event. Maybe it's a talk that I'm doing, a workshop, a job interview. I visualize 5 minutes after successful completion where I'm celebrating, I'm eating ice cream because that's my favorite treat. And I'm just like surrounded by people who I love who are telling me, Trang, congratulations, you did it. Like you're there. And then I work backwards. I visualize 5 minutes before successful completion, and then three-quarters of the way through, and then halfway through, and then a quarter of the way through, and then just before that event begins. And
Wow.
sometimes we don't have a specific event. It might be more like a general reality. We can do that too. 5 minutes after, say it's like December 31st, it's just before midnight, and we look back at our year and we're celebrating the year that was. I work backwards and then I go forwards again, right through those stages. At the start, a quarter of the way through, halfway, three-quarters, 5 minutes before successful completion, and then 5 minutes after successful completion.
Wow, that's so cool. I actually think everyone that's listening should either write that down or pause, stop, and rewind. Because what you just shared, I feel like is a framework that anyone can use. It's so simple, it's so powerful, and it's so effective.
Mm, very much so. Because when we go through all of those stages, we don't leave any stone unturned. Like we work through the entire event inside out so that even if something goes slightly wrong halfway through the event, we can be more okay with that because we have done that visualization, not just at the end when it was all successful, but we did the visualization throughout the event as well. We
Yeah.
create more familiarity in our brain that we have been there before, even though we haven't. Simply through the visualization process, we convince our brain that it is safe and it is something that we are familiar with. So we have a higher tolerance to be able to handle the stresses and to be able to adapt in the moment.
And I think it's a really powerful neural mechanism as well because you are pretty much tricking your brain into believing that you already are that person that can create that success, that can create that amazing event, that can sign up new clients, that can make money online or whatever your goal is. And when
Mm,
you've got those visualizations, your brain doesn't actually know what's real from what's your current reality, and it will start creating you'll start acting and behaving like the person that will create that reality, and that reality will eventually formulate its science. So
yeah.
I love that you've just reminded me to go back to my visualization manifestation type
Mm.
meditations as well. That's amazing. Trang, what are your thoughts on affirmations? I know there's a lot of people that don't think affirmations work. Does it work for you? Do you do it? And is that part of your process that you take your clients through?
Mm, yeah, like I know there are people who love affirmations. It works so well for them. There are people who like, they put their hand on their heart and they're like, I hate affirmations. Like for me, I'm not too hard either way because I believe that everything can work for someone. So I'm not gonna hate against any method. I'm not gonna be like, oh, everyone has to do this. This is the only way forward. Like personally, I actually don't do affirmations, not in the classic sense of like, I am strong, I am powerful. I'm quite a visual person.
Mm,
So instead of affirmations, I do those visualizations. And because that is suited to like my preferences and like my personality type, being a visual person, and I like to see the success in front of me, I find that helps.
yeah.
Um, another visualization that I do that could be said is closely linked to affirmations is not just visualizing a future successful event, but visualizing who I'm going to be in the future. So,
Mm,
for example, I remember when I first discovered the higher self visualization, I found that so powerful. And what I would do is I would close my eyes and I would visualize myself in 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and like how this higher version of myself, this more successful version of myself, how she would walk, how she would talk, how she would show up and respond to events and unexpected changes in her life. Like
yeah.
how she would wake up in the morning, how her days would look like a typical day, and then how she would go to bed at night, how that would feel for her, how that would look for her. And when I visualize that, then I could make something that's intangible tangible.
Mm,
And because of that, I wouldn't have to actually wait 6 to 12 months to start walking and talking and showing up like this woman. I could
mm,
start being her now because I could see it. And therefore, because I could see it, I could become it. So I would say that is like relatively close to affirmations. It's like, okay, I am strong, I am confident, I am courageous. But instead of just saying it like that, I would see it. I would see what courageous looks like. It looks like Trang doing, like, say, a TEDx talk like I did last month. Oh, no, 2 months ago now. 2 months ago, doing a TEDx talk and just rocking it on stage, walking up the stairs, walking up on stage, owning the stage, speaking and projecting her voice out across the audience so that people in the back row are nodding and they're moved to tears. And then finishing the talk and seeing people clapping and cheering. Like I would see the manifestation of that affirmation. I am confident, I am courageous. So
mm.
that's my personal approach.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's awesome. I personally, I'm also not a massive affirmations person. I don't personally think that it's a very effective or powerful tool for me. I'm very similar to you. I really believe in visualization and I can manifest things very quickly through visualization. Things that are
Mm.
outside of my control somehow come to me, and it's not just success, it's not just in business, it's like just opportunities, car parks. It's crazy. But I am a believer in changing our language, and I'm sure you are too. So rather than saying, I
Mm.
hopefully it will go well, or yeah, hopefully, or like those things obviously ingrain in our mind. So I'm a believer in being conscious about what I say and changing the dialogue and the language. Yeah. Now, Trang, you are a magazine cover woman. That is incredible. You are a TEDx speaker. You have, you run workshops, you run retreats. You've helped people not only grow their business, but, like leave their jobs. Could you tell us about what is your process? What do you take your clients through to help them, be able to, pinpoint their primary goal and focus and, create the life of their dreams?
Yeah, it's actually related to what we're talking about now in that everything starts with our inner state. Like if we have this inner critic, if we have this like these limiting thoughts, if we are constantly doubting ourselves, then it doesn't matter what business strategies we have. It doesn't matter if we have the exact path laid out in front of us, like in terms of what we need to do. We're not going to do it. We're going to procrastinate, we're going to hold ourselves back, we're going to find excuses. So the first part of my process when it comes to working with anyone, whether it's one-on-one in a group setting, is doing the inner work to transform the way that they think and feel about themselves. Like running a fine comb through all the things that they probably didn't even think about or realize previously to be able to overcome the blockages and the obstacles and the wounds that have been sitting there and
Mm.
just like, festering from such a young age. So much of our wounds come from our childhood. Kind of like what we were saying before. If we got bullied when we were 6 years old, it's not going to be a surprise if we have an intense fear of being different or an intense fear of judgment as an adult. That fear sits within us. So we need to work through those things. And that is the first step that I work through with my clients. And then
Wow.
from there, it is getting clear on what the end goal is, like what you said before, Phoebe, because so many people they do spend the best years of their life climbing and racing up the mountain to get to the top first and to be able to like shine and to be able to just like tell everyone they've made it to the top. But then they do get to the top and they realize that they'd actually climbed the wrong mountain this whole time. And they were too busy racing up to the top, doing the thing that everyone else is doing, that everyone else tells them that they should be doing, racing up to the top of the mountain that they think they should be climbing, when maybe it's not even the mountain that they want to be climbing. So starting with the end and checking in, like, what is your ultimate dream? Like,
Yeah.
what does your life look like to you? What does it feel like to you? What actually matters to you? so that you can start your journey by surveying the mountain range and choosing the right mountain to climb up rather than just racing up one that isn't even right for you.
Yeah.
So starting with the end is a big one. And for me, when I had my quarter life crisis and I was like, I feel like I'm made for more. I feel like I can do more. But what is that? What does that look like? Like how I got clear on that was by starting with the end. I did a visualization again, and this changed my life because like this gave me so much clarity. It gave me all the answers that I had been seeking for such a long time. It was a deathbed visualization, visualizing myself on my deathbed at the end of my life and looking back over my lifetime and seeing, okay, this is what my life was. Am I happy with that? And I realized that if I were to continue on the same path that I was on now, I would be so far from feeling fulfillment, from feeling like I had utilized my potential, from feeling that I had contributed to the world in a meaningful way. I was so far from that. And that was a rude awakening because then I had to be like, well, if I do want to get to my deathbed and feel fulfilled and feel love and feel pride and feel like I've contributed, what would my life have to look like then? And it just became so clear because I started with the end of like, this is ultimately what matters to me, not just at the end of the year, like not just a yearly goal, but at the end of my life. And that gave me a lot of clarity that I needed to chase after what I wanted. The judgments, the risks, the fear of failure, like none of that mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was I had this one life and I've got to go for it. There's no other option.
That is so powerful, Trang. I actually have never heard anyone on this podcast share what you've just said. I
Mm.
personally also have not done this particular practice you've just mentioned, which I'm very excited to delve into. So thank you. And I think you're right. I think that a lot of the time, people are so consumed by the what ifs and the fear and what if it goes wrong? What if no one buys my book? What if no one comes to my event? What if I look like a failure or an idiot or whatever? That they forget well, what if nothing goes wrong and everything goes right? What if you write a bestseller? And what if you change the lives of 5 people, 5 million people, 50 people? What if all of the fears doesn't actually happen and it actually is the complete opposite? How would that look like? And
Mm.
I think we would definitely do things very differently. Hey,
Yeah, that's the thing. I literally had this conversation with a client last night because one of the biggest fears we face is the fear of failure. And I'm like, hey, like let's just do a hypothetical for a second. Like, what if your success were guaranteed? What if you knew your success were guaranteed? You know that that is your future. Like you can see your future and you know that's what's happening. Then would you be as affected by the micro failures, the micro setbacks, the rejections, the judgment along the way? Like, would that affect you as much as it does now? And she said, no, of course not. She's like, I know that my success is there. So I know that everything along the way is just temporary. It's not going to define where I eventually end up. And I'm like, well, what if I told you now that that is your life? Like, you know that success is there for the taking. It's there for the taking for all of us. Because, only one thing can happen when we devote ourselves to our work and we plant the seeds and we nurture the seeds and we do not stop. Only one thing can happen. And that is the success of the goals that we want. So we can then take that knowing that that is there. So everything that we do face along the way, it's just transient. It's just part of the story. It's not the whole story.
so good. So, so good. Trang, what would you say to people that currently are thinking to themselves, great, I now know what I want to do. I want to create, say, for example, a business. I want to create a really powerful brand and I want to create impact. But their fears is seeming like they're not very influential because at the moment there's a big, expectation that people need to have 10,000 or 20,000 followers in order to be successful and build a powerful brand. What if they are just starting out? They don't have a huge following. What do you say to those men or women?
What I would say is focus on how you can help people. Because when you are coming from that genuine intention and that genuine place, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. There are plenty of brands and businesses with 100,000 followers, with more than that, but they struggle to convert those 100,000 followers because they are coming from a place of not wanting to help those people. They're coming from a place of wanting more money, more fame, more whatever it is, right? Versus, I know plenty of people with 5,000 followers or less who are making millions because they have this most pure intent to help. And when they have that authenticity and that transparency in how they operate, they magnetize all of those 5,000 followers. They build a true community of loyal and trusting people. And and majority of those 5,000 people then eventually convert and become part of their business. So
Mm,
ultimately, it's not about like the following, it's not about the top of the funnel. What it's about is the intention that converts people and gives people value, helps people, and they then refer their friends, they then refer their family, they like stay as long-term clients because they love what you do. And that's something that I always remind myself of, like, if I want more money, the first question I've got to ask myself is, well, how can I help people better? Because money is simply an exchange of value. It's an exchange of being able to help someone. If I help you, then yeah, often the exchange in business is you're going to give me money, right? If I help you better, if I help you more effectively to solve your problem, then what I am giving you is going to be worth more.
yeah.
So that is the question that we should be asking ourselves. And that is what leads to higher conversions, more visibility, more client loyalty, more growth in the business.
So well said, Trang. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's so well said. And I couldn't agree more. I
Mm,
think that we need to start showing up to help, even if it's that one person, because that transcends not only how it changes how you show up, it changes the energy of how you show up. People can feel it and it's natural and it's unexplainable, but people will naturally be drawn to you if you are there to serve and not there to prove, or whether it's prove to others or prove to yourself that you've got it. You
mm.
show up very differently when you're doing it for the purpose and intent of helping others. And I think the last question that I have before we move on to the rapid fire questions is, how do you beat perfectionism? I don't know what your method is. For me, obviously self awareness was a really good way of helping me trying to get everything perfect before I launch or before I post. Trang, do you have that? And how do you beat it if you do?
Yeah. So to be fully transparent, I feel like I've always been lucky, you could say, that I actually never had a huge attachment to perfectionism naturally. Instead, I've actually always had the opposite. Like, I have always been one to just jump into things and YOLO it. Like my first online course, I remember I came up with the idea of it, I marketed it, and then I launched it within 3 weeks. My first ever
Wow.
online course. It was so quick turnaround. I believe that my impulsivity, you could say, or my okayness with not
Mm,
being perfect
mm,
has been a key part of being able to make moves more quickly. Because I've
mm,
either made moves more quickly and progressed more quickly because I've just made decisions more quickly, or I've failed more quickly,
mm,
therefore learnt more quickly, and then been able to progress more quickly. So
mm,
that has always been kind of part of my personality, and I acknowledge that. But I also do acknowledge that, yeah, in a lot of people, perfectionism is a strong part that holds them back. It's constantly what is, blocking their ability to take that leap, to put themselves out there, to post that piece of content, to launch that podcast, to, start that business. And perfectionism is really interesting because I read Brene Brown's book talking about this, where she talks about the difference between being a perfectionist and simply having high standards for yourself. And
Yes.
this is interesting. I found this so interesting because she said
Yes.
having high standards of yourself comes from a place of within. You have that desire to challenge yourself and to grow and to achieve big things, right? Like that comes from within. But perfectionism is actually a mask of having high standards for yourself, because perfectionism actually comes from an external source.
Yes.
It's actually you trying to be perfect because you're scared of what
Yes.
other people might think of you if you're not, how you might
Or
look to other people. Yeah.
yes. Or fear of rejection, fear of
Yes.
abandonment. If we went deeper, there's so many layers to that. So wow, you're spot on. I actually completely forgot about that book. You're talking about, I think it's called The Art of Perfectionism, or
The
was it
gifts of imperfection.
The Gifts of Imperfection?
Gifts of
That's the one.
imperfection.
The Gifts of
Yes.
Imperfection. Great book. I
Yeah.
remember reading that a couple of years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. And Brené Brown is just an incredible legend. Like she's the best. I'm obsessed with her work.
It might even be
But
on that
yeah.
bookshelf right behind you. I don't know.
Yes. Good eye, Phoebe.
The
It is
color,
right
I'm like,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. So you can tell I'm a Brené Brown fan, big time. But yeah, like it comes from an external source of fear, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of not belonging. So recognizing that is a good place to start, and like
Mm,
working through that from the core of like, hey, this is a fear that I am carrying. This is what's contaminating my decision making and my potential for growth. But I think
mm,
a perspective that can really help with this is remembering that there is no such thing as perfect. We iterate ourselves to success. Even the best-selling books, they've sold, more copies than any other book. They've been a best-selling book. Even those books, a few years later, will have a new edition
that's
because there
right.
is always more potential to improve and to iterate and to evolve. So if that is the case, even with best-selling books, then how come we can't produce something and just tell ourselves, hey, this is simply edition number one.
That's right.
This is the best that I can produce right now. This is good enough for where I am right now.
That's right.
And then I'm going to put that out there. I'm going to be proud of it. And then from there, I'm going to produce edition number two, and then edition number three, edition number four. And that is how we've got to see our whole journey and our art. It's not about having the final product, it's about simply producing the best edition for right now and giving space for more editions in the future. Because, like everyone says this, everyone's like, yep, the success isn't an overnight thing. Success is the result of like the last 10 years of what's been going on behind closed doors. Everyone says that, but like we don't, like we find ourselves like not believing them. We're like, yeah, but like sure, but how can I still get that success overnight? Like everyone still wants to hack the system. But let me just say, if that were possible, it would have been done by now. We can't have that success overnight. It has to be many iterations, many learnings, many failures, experiences, more skills, more knowledge acquired over time. So be okay with having edition one right now, because that is the secret and the path to having edition 20, which might be your breakthrough, which might be that best-selling book or that TED talk that goes viral online. So that is what I would recommend that you remind yourself of.
Trang, so well said. Thank you so much for your amazing gifts that you've shared with us today. Like, that is so incredible what you've just, those golden nuggets. And I've taken away a lot. There's so much that the listeners can take away from.
Mhm.
And I just want to thank you for your time and for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phoebe, and giving me this platform to share. And it's been a really fun time to have this conversation.
Yeah, it has. It has. Trang, before we wrap up, I'd love to ask you a few rapid fire questions just so
Oh,
that listeners
yes.
can get to know you a little bit more. And the point of these questions is that you aren't supposed to think too hard for them. It's the first answer that comes in mind.
All right, let's go. I'm
Let's
ready.
do it. All right. So, rapid fire question number one. If there was one thing that you cannot live a single day without, whether it's physical or non physical, what would it be?
The first thing that came to my mind, which is the most boring answer, is food. And like that's not bit and no shit. Like we are humans and we need food, but like I love food. It's one of the first things I think about when I wake up in the morning.
I love that. That's a new one. And Trang, what or who inspires you or inspired you to do what you do today?
This one's so tough to answer because there are so many sources of inspiration. So many.
Right?
I know this is rapid fire, so I'm gonna have to try and keep this quick. If I were to bring it down to one person, I would have to say that it is my parents.
Wow.
Like coming from, and I know that's two people, but both my parents coming from Vietnam, they have worked their ass off to be able to build the life that they have in Australia now, knowing the suffering that they went through, knowing the suffering that my grandparents went through as refugees to give me this life that I have in Australia. I don't take that lightly. And I see it as my
Mm.
duty to make the most of the suffering that they went through to live the life that they sacrificed for me, but also to then gift that to other people as well, to give others the opportunity to have the same. So, yeah.
So beautiful. There's so much to take away from what you just said. Thank you. Trang, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, whether it's in your business or in your personal life? What do you want to do or have accomplished?
Oh, okay. I'm just going to paint the picture right now. I love everything that I get to do right now. So, in 5 years' time, it is what I'm doing now, but more of it. So,
Mm.
my one-on-one mentoring, my group masterminds, my retreats, talking, speaking, right? Like doing speaking gigs, all of that, but bigger, more people who I can reach, more people who I can touch and to impact through my work. And then in my personal life, similar. I am so blessed to have beautiful friendships, beautiful connections in my life. So continuing to nurture those relationships. I currently travel 4 to 6 months of the year. I love that. I would love to continue that. Maybe eventually bring it down even more because I'm such a homebody. It's funny. Like I travel so much, yet I'm a homebody AF. But yeah, I love travel. So even like a third of the year traveling would be a big part of my dream reality that I continue to live.
Amazing. I think we have a very similar vision. I love that. Love that
Mm.
so much. Trang, what's one big takeaway you've had recently that changed the way you see life or see the world?
Okay. We were just talking about this before we started recording. So it was my birthday last week. And in previous years, I had actually kept my birthday private. So people online wouldn't know about it. Even my friends, like who I would catch up with on the day, would forget that it's my birthday that day. But this year I did it differently. And I made it known far and wide online that it was my birthday. I was celebrating it. And I actually found that it actually felt weird on the day getting so much celebration and love and surprise gifts and surprise visits from people to my house. I found it
Wow.
weird initially because I was like, well, I haven't done anything. Like I'm used to being in the spotlight. Like for example, my TEDx talk, like speaking in front of hundreds of people. Like I'm no stranger to being in the spotlight, but it seriously felt weird on my birthday to have all of this love because my thinking was, well, I haven't achieved anything. Why should I deserve this love? And that was a revelation right there that, oh my gosh, Trang, do you hear what you're thinking? Like, you don't need to achieve things to be worthy of love. Like, simply by being a human being who has touched people in her life, of course, I am worthy of having genuine people who care about me. And that's when I realized I needed to create more separation between
Mm.
my accomplishments and my business as Trang Nova to actually being Trang Nguyen, who is that's my real surname, and having worth and identity in Trang Nguyen as well as Trang Nova. So that was a big revelation.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing. That is sensational. What a huge birthday. Like
Hmm.
that is a great realization to have on your, was it 29th birthday?
Yeah, it was. So
Wow.
kicking off the
Amazing.
last year of my 20s with a bang, that's for sure.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Trang, if you could leave the world with one message, what would it be?
Mm. What is sitting on my heart today that I want to share? I would say, hey, remember that we have this one life. We have one life. So, what is there actually to lose? Like, go for it. Go big, reach for the stars. go through those, go through the judgment, the failure, the setbacks, the rejection, go through it because ultimately none of that is losing anything near as much as if we get to the end of our life and we have foregone the one chance that we have to live out this incredible, deep, and diverse human experience that we could have. So go for it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Trang. I have so enjoyed not only this chat and conversation, but your authenticity and your rawness and also all the knowledge and wisdom that you've shared today. It is so powerful. And I think there's so much to take away from this episode. And I'm definitely looking forward to, re-listening to what we've talked about. Trang, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners? Any upcoming events or any offers that you may have in your business? How can people connect with you? What are your social handles?
Yeah, sure. The best way to connect with me would be through Instagram. That's where I am most active. So my handle is Trang, Trang underscore Nova, Nova. You can also check out my website, which is trangnova.com. And from there, you'll find anything and everything. So everything is there. I post it pretty much every day on socials. I've got my weekly podcast episodes. So if you want to just soak up some free content, it's all there for you.
Amazing, Trang. Thank you so much. And to all the listeners, thank you for tuning in. It's been great to have you on the show. And we can't wait to keep releasing more to help you be inspired to thrive and shine.